May I now invite our convention chair, Puan Sri Siu-yong Nanalingam, to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
On, okay. I guess you're tired of seeing my face. I promise you this will be, for today, the last time, before tonight, of course. We'll meet again tonight, I'm sorry. Okay, I know the Queen said a lot of things about food, and I think that is the problem with us. Even today, we had lunch, we had tea, we had lunch, and then tea again, and then tonight we're going to have plenty of dinner. So I hope you all don't sleep during this session, okay? Because it's all about your money, your wealth, your legacy, and all that, and your longevity. And I think she said something like, I think we should eat less so that we don't get so obese or something. So it is my really great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Tracy Woon, who will be giving her insights on longevity, liquidity, and legacy from her experience and work over many years in UBS, wealth management, and other financial institutions. But for today, she will be focusing on women managing their financials for the future. I know we talk a lot about how we help other women, but I think it's about time we have to look after ourselves, otherwise we can't look after others. We can't look after our family, we can't look after our communities. So we better think about looking after ourselves for the future. Tracy Woon is the Vice Chairman, Asia Pacific Wealth Management and Head of the Women Initiative in Wealth Management Asia Pacific for UBS. She has more than 35 years of investment banking experience, having worked on the whole spectrum of corporate finance transactions, from equity fundraising to debt offerings to advisory work, including takeovers of public companies in Singapore and ASEAN. Tracy is a lawyer by profession, but most of her time she has been working in the banking profession, although she said she would have preferred to be an engineer. In 2016, Tracy was conferred the IBF Distinguished Fellow Award, and I think IBF stands for International Banking Finance, is it? Distinguished Fellow Award. So, but despite her very, very busy schedule, her very busy life as a banker, Tracy is a mother of 3. I don't know how she manages it, but I think she says her husband is a house husband. So let me pass this mic over to Tracy. All over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so nice to see such a wonderful room of women, and I gather you are all from all over the world, so it's really a great pleasure for me to be up here. You know, Puan Sri first spoke to me about this wonderful conference, and I thought, it's a year away, and well, I'm here. And I know many of you have probably wondered, why is UBS wanting to participate in this? I mean, we are the world's largest wealth manager, and no doubt, of course, our clients are all extremely wealthy women. Because we as a bank, actually, about 4 or 5 years ago, have made it a priority to better serve our women clients. The reason why I'm up here, and when Puan Sri first spoke to me about this, I was really excited because I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to actually be able to address so many women from all over the world. When UBS first started thinking about its commitment to women, one of the pledges that we made actually, and I was really pleased to see it in the program book, we actually said that we would like to, as part of the United Nations Development Goal for Gender Equality, hope that we could actually bring financial confidence to 1 million women by 2020. So, this is certainly one little step that I'm pleased UBS as a firm can also do. As I said, when we started out 4 or 5 years ago thinking about making women a priority, Because, the reality is we make up 49.6% of the world's population. And in fact, women are actually going to control so much of the wealth over the years to come, and is therefore an important segment. We found many discoveries in our conversations with females over the last 4 or 5 years. You will find in your pact that we've included one of our reports called Own Your Worth. And this is something I really would like to share with you. As Puan Sri says, this is a wonderful room of many beautiful women who I think are all very selfless and wanting to do good in the world, and we all try to pay it forward and pay it back. But truly, I think we would be able to best serve the community and all that we want to do in our purpose in life if, first of all, we can look after ourselves. And so the purpose of my talk today is hopefully to share with you some of these findings, and also why, therefore, it is important that we know how to look after ourselves from a financial perspective so that, we are in a position to help our family and our loved ones, and more importantly, whatever else and others that we want to do. So first of all, let me share a little video with you. This is a video that it's a condensation of that report that you have in your bag. And this report was done as a result of our interview with more than 3,700 women all over the world about what they think of and whether their own financial needs were addressed. So let's watch the video and then I'll talk some more. How many of you feel that you could relate to this video? I see many hands, right? So often we are all super at looking after the house. We're really great at managing our kids, our short-term needs, our marketing bills, whatever it takes to look after the house. And actually, oftentimes, we leave many of the longer-term planning to our husbands, who, God bless their souls, I'm sure they are all very responsible and they take care of us. Actually, I was hoping to see more men in this room. Unfortunately, they are not here. In fact, most of the time when I do my presentation, many of the women in the room says, oh, you know, our husbands should be here listening to it because you're preaching to the choir. So hopefully, if they are not here and you enjoy what I say, do make them read the report and share some of my thoughts with them as well. So I think that, you know, we all realize we are actually really good at short-term stuff. We know that there are many long-term things that we should think of, but oftentimes we leave it so much to our husbands to think about. The reality is this, as you can see from the report, you know, we are going to outlive men. That's going to be a fact. Because women are going to be a lot more educated and probably also a lot more independent. We're going to see a lot of transition of wealth from families to daughters. There are women who are going to be successful in businesses. Women are, in most cases, going to end up being by themselves at the end of life. And therefore, it is really important, I think, for all of us to think about what it is that we need to be comfortable so that we can, you know, be in a position to actually plan our life and to have a purposeful life. So let me get on to my slides. So these were the findings. As I said, we are really good at short-term finances. I think when we did the survey, there were a lot of women who say, yeah, you know, my husband would obviously come to me and ask me for my views if we were going to buy a house. But when it comes to the more important things, like retirement planning, like long-term care, like insurance, they take care of it. And I know for a fact in Asia, we obviously have a room full of global women here. Surprisingly, actually, a country like South America, actually the women there are, in fact, a lot more financially confident than other parts of the world. And that's because I think women there actually have to look after themselves better. But in a country like Asia, where much of the wealth in a family has always been built by the husbands, you know, wives actually do leave many of these decisions to their husbands. So most women do opt out of long-term financial decisions. Now, I'm not asking you tomorrow when you go home to say, husband, dear, you know, hand me the keys to our safe and look after the money. I think what's really important is that for all of us, you need to be a partner with your spouse. You need to be able to know what's going on so that if anything happens, you're not going to be left in a lurch. And you will see from the report, much of the findings, in particular when we interview widows and divorcees, I think their biggest regret was that when the inevitable happened, they were in a position where they suddenly realized, okay, actually my husband didn't leave me a lot, or I am not left with a lot, and they're really having to struggle and start from there. The other actually scary thing I found from the report was that the young women also defer much of these decisions to their spouses. And I think it's partly historical because probably many of our daughters have watched the way their parents have left decisions to husbands. And so it is also incumbent on all of us as women and as mothers that we should make our children and our daughters aware that they need to be financially confident as well. These were some of the reasons. As I said earlier, you know, women felt that, well, because my husband made the money, they know more. We have a divide and conquer approach. I look after the kids, he look after the finances. He's the primary breadwinner. So these are many of the reasons why women actually opt out of these long-term financial decisions. What's important, though, I think, is that when you actually are confident and know what's going on, it does actually improve relationship between couples. You will be less stressed because you know what your situation is. And truly, I believe it is one way where we can all then turn our efforts and our focus into helping others and doing the things that we really want to do. So this is a typical life event, if you think about it, right? When we're young, when we get to our working age, when we plan for our retirement, and the bubbles may not happen in this way for everybody, but pretty much, these are the things you think about, right? From our young, when you graduate, when you get married, you think about buying your first home, the kids come, whether you have a career, if the not so good happen and you have a divorce or your parents start aging, you have kids, you have grandchildren, and so there are many things that actually stress us and make us have to think about what is this in life that we need to think about. And that's why my speech today is really entitled Longevity, Liquidity, and Legacy, because I think these are the three buckets that we need to be mindful of. Liquidity is one where you need to think about on a recurrent basis, on a needs basis. How much do you need, right? And plan accordingly. And then you need to think about slightly longer term, maybe a 3-5 year view, depending on what happens in life. How much do you need? Of course, those of us who, if we were so fortunate to be able to have more than a comfortable egg nest, then we think about philanthropy. We think about what it is that we can share with the rest of the less fortunate and what it is as a legacy that we want to leave behind. So I would say this to you. At UBS, we try to make it simple for our clients, and this is kind of the thought process that we take our clients through, and also something I would highly encourage all of you to think about. Just really 5 simple questions, right? What do you want to accomplish in your life? This may well change over time as we all grow older and as our finances change. What are our short, medium, and long-term goals? What are the trade-offs you are willing to make? And how would you define financial success? Who are the people that matter to you? And these are going to be different people in your life at different times, right? When at some point in our life we have probably aging parents to take care of. We may have young children, we may have relatives, we may have institutions that we want to be mindful of, we have careers, we have bosses, we have many different constituents. And more importantly, do we actually have to take care of them financially as well? I mean, some of us could be fortunate enough where we have a lot of siblings or our parents are already well-to-do and we don't have to provide for them. We pretty much only have to look after ourselves and our own family, right? And what more do you want for them? What else could you be doing for them? Are they financially prepared for the future? Legacy I've spoken about. One of the interesting things we found out talking to our women clients also is that, and I'm sure all of you can relate to this, I think women think about life very differently from men. Certainly we have found in our conversations with our female clients that the dialogue is not always, when they make investment, about returns per se. I think women think about returns, obviously, but women think about leaving the right values for their children. They think about societal impact. They think about sustainability. I do believe we care a lot more for planet Earth and many of these other things. And I know, Puan Sri, the fact that you are doing this conference and many of the plenary sessions that talk about whether it's water, is gender diversity. All these are issues that women care about. So, the kind of legacy that you want to leave behind, what difference do you think you would like to make? And therefore, what portion of your wealth do you think you are going to, at some point, whether you work for it today and you build up, or if you are already so fortunate to be able to say, here's what I'm going to set aside that I can do for the rest of the people in the world. What are your main concerns? And therefore think about, do you have enough wealth to do that? I had a very interesting conversation with a client, and she obviously is an extremely qualified and financially confident lady. And she said to me, one of the things when I was young, it was my grandmother who influenced me. My grandmother said to me, whatever it is, when you start work, 50% of your money has to go into a bank account and you save it for a rainy day. So, many people do their savings in different ways. But she thought about being financially confident and being financially aware when she was already at a very young age. And, her grandmother is obviously, a very elderly lady now, and she's had the benefit of someone of even that generation who thought about these things. And therefore, the final thing, obviously, is how do you plan to achieve your life's vision? So, I think when you think about all these questions, you will plan. You will plan in terms of, therefore, as you progress, and I see obviously many people in this room of differing ages, so you are obviously going to be at different parts of your life paths and journey of your wealth, of your career, and as you think about the three buckets as I spoke about. One is liquidity for your current needs, what it is that you need. For your longevity over the next 3-5 years, what do you think it is that you need? And if you were so fortunate, what would a legacy that you would leave behind? And when you think of finances in those buckets, you will be able to plan. Or certainly think about, therefore, how do you plan? And I would encourage you, if you were married and have a spouse, speak to your spouse. Start being more actively involved so that when the inevitable does happen and if you happen to be alone, you're not going to be struggling and be in a state of panic and suddenly be overwrought by what it is that you have to do. And until we all look after ourselves and we're financially confident and therefore not stressed, and therefore be aware that this is where we are in life, I think we will all be able to play a far better and more meaningful and constructive role in helping others in the world. So I'm going to stop there. We have about another 15 minutes or so. Puan Sri and I were going to sit and have a chat, and we'll take questions from all of you if you have any. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing with us on the UBS Wealth Way approach. Liquidity for short-term expenses, longevity for longer-term needs, and legacy for needs beyond our own. Talking about what we are doing or we want to do for the community and beyond. I know that many of them will probably have questions, but if I could just start off with one. What do you think needs to be changed and done differently in order for women to feel more empowered? Because we've been talking a lot about empowering and confident. We ourselves do that to ourselves so that we can play a more proactive or active role in managing our finances and making good financial decisions. Well, real practical, stuff that you could help us, advise us.
I think being aware certainly is the start of it all. A conversation with your spouse is definitely one, if you are not the person who's managing it. And just actually being aware of what there is. If you were fortunate enough to have an advisor, you should certainly speak. I would say start by knowing what you have and how much you need, and then you can plan. We all have to start somewhere, right?
Okay, what about your personal experiences? As you were doing this thing yourself, do you have anything to share about experiences of others or your own experiences?
I guess I've been very fortunate being in the financial industry all along, and but I was also equally guilty, right? It took me a long time before I was kind of, because I was in the industry and therefore managing my own finances was second nature. I actually forgot to teach my children, and I do now, of course, but. And this is kind of something, although I say it to many of my male clients, our male clients in UBS, I kind of laugh at myself because it's also something I used to be guilty of, that a lot of men actually do provide for us, but putting food on the table is not always the best solution, because when they're no longer around to fish, we all panic, right? So I think just being aware of the basics and what it is that you want to do, and then seek help, really, is a good way to start.
Okay. Actually, I do have some questions from the floor already, and maybe we'll take this one. Because I think there are a few young people here, but not many. And because generally not many young women join Soroptimist because they're so busy with their lives, and then they think that this is more for the older people who have retired or about to retire and got a lot more time for the rest of the world, and they think they're really busy, right? So what advice would you have, do you have for a young woman who has just graduated and is starting their careers from young, I mean?
I think all the questions that I have posed should be questions that they should be asking themselves along the way. As I said, these questions and answers are going to change, clearly, right, as they progress. We all have to start out from zero base. I remember when I graduated and I started working, my sister, I think, was the one. And so with my first paycheck, I bought my first share. I had no idea what it was, but I think I bought shares in the newspaper in Singapore because her broker said to me, it's not a bad share to buy, and it's got dividends. And I thought, okay. I was also fortunate enough when I grew up at the time, interest rate was 7%. So at least even if you put your money in the bank, you do have some income. Today, of course, it doesn't happen. But these are little things that you have to start with. So I'll give you an example. My son, who's now 30, and I said to him the other day, you should think about buying shares as an investment. And I made sure that, he went and read up about the company. He decided why it was that he would buy. And I had to tell him that, doesn't mean the shares are going to go up, but you need to actually understand the decisions that you make and be confident about it. So I think we all have to learn along the way. For someone whose daughter is going to graduate and start working, I think it's important to save. It's important for her to have aspirations. And the only way you're going to start saving and start thinking about how much you need is to have aspirations and to have goals and objectives. So I think they do go hand in hand. And young people just have to be first of all, patient as they grow in their careers and as they build their nest eggs. But there's no substitute to being aware and being conscious and therefore planning ahead.
So it's more about being conscious of what is the future like, and then sharing with your spouse if you're married, and also thinking of your own future. But trouble is, young people, they are probably a little bit more, are they risk adverse? I'm not sure. So if they are going to, use the money wrongly, then it could be a disaster. So would that be a safe advice to say there is this way to do it, which is quite safe?
Yeah, no. Otherwise, we'll all be billionaires and millionaires. There are many ways for one to build I don't assume someone who just graduated is going to understand the financial markets and be investing in any sophisticated stuff. Just even the ability to save is important, right? The ability to think that they need to build a nest egg, to look after themselves, to have some form of insurance is also important. Healthcare is going to be expensive. Maybe they should think about buying insurance for themselves, for instance. So these are the little things that, as a young person, you need to be mindful of.
Wouldn't it be I'm just going to be a simpleton to ask you a stupid question. Like, would it be better to put in FD, buy bonds, or things like that, which is like, or start playing shares, which is risky, I think. So what would be a better decision for them, the young people? We don't want them to risk or throw away their money.
I think little knowledge is obviously dangerous, and yeah, I think you need to start by actually saving and then learning about what it is that you could be comfortable investing before you actually embark on it, on any form of investment. Otherwise, yeah, I guess you start by saving what little you have and putting it in the bank to start with, right?
Yeah, I've got more questions here. This is from the perspective of advice for a single woman or single women who have had to look after their own finances. What advice would you give them, single women, Because there's no husband to complain about or to talk about, so it's their own problem.
Which is good.
We like to blame them, but I think here we can't blame them.
I don't think it matters whether you are single or married or otherwise. I think being financially confident and aware is part and parcel. Many of the young today or women, because we are all in more fortunate situations, we focus our priorities on other things other than just ourselves. I have many colleagues here who are great advisors who can share with you as well. They're all sitting there. Very difficult for me to be specific, obviously, without knowing, your situation, and like I said, I think what's important is if you go through many of the questions and the thought process, I think you will be able to figure out what it is that you need. Just be mindful that we're all going to live for very long now. We're going to live longer and longer, which also means that at some point, health is going to be an issue. Healthcare is not going to be cheap. So you need to plan certainly for those times. Insurance is something you should all think about, whether it's healthcare insurance or some form of insurance, right? So retirement planning, long-term care insurance, I think these are all part and parcels of things that are important.
This question has been, I think, quite relevant to the discussion we had earlier when I think some reference in the book to say that your husband is a house husband. So this question is, if a woman and a husband are working together, how do you take care of your child then, from 9 to 5? Should one of them give up the higher job one of them to give up her or his job, to fully take care of the child, and who should do it? What do you think? What is your advice?
So actually, both my husband and I used to work. It wasn't that he never worked. And when my children were growing up, I was very fortunate to have my mother who helped me keep an eye on my children. But I prioritized. So I gave up a lot of the women things, right? I don't go and do my nails. I don't do my hair. I don't bathe my children. I don't feed my children. All the time that I had for my children were always quality time. I made sure it was time well spent. And so, we all have to prioritize. It's about prioritizing between, just like the way we would prioritize on how we think about our finances. So I obviously made a lot of sacrifices when my children were young and growing up. They're all grown up now, but still kids in our eyes.
The sacrifices I heard was like giving up golf as well, right?
Yes, indeed.
This is...
But I will say it's absolutely possible to have a career as well as children. And I never thought that was not possible.
Most of the questions seem to be, what is the balance, like the best balance between a husband and wife, taking care of the financials in terms of the future. Usually, like you said, we'll leave it to the husband, But is there like some advice that you would give them in terms of the balance? How should they do it?
Yeah, here's what I would say. I think when we speak with our clients, it's never really about being separate or being so independent or taking over. It's really, particularly if the husband is already the one that is the principal and the most active, I think what's important is at least there be a partnership and that you are aware as first steps to what they are, to understand. I think now that I've given you kind of the framework, it's also a good conversation to have with your spouse, right? These few questions. So that at least when he's investing or he thinks about providing for you, you have some sense of, even if you're not actively managing, just to be aware. Certainly the results have shown that when we are actually more aware of what's going on, it will certainly improve relationship. You're going to be less stressed because you know what your situation is and you are not going to be shocked. I was actually doing a panel with this lady who is second generation transition. She decided to go back to the family business and become the CEO because the father had a stroke, and she, because she was so able. She was really shocked. She said, when my father had a stroke, we realized that actually my mother had no idea about everything that the father did because, the father didn't share. Fortunately, the father recovered and the children were able to now make sure that things are in place. So I would say oftentimes we take for granted, right? Until you hear these stories, you don't actually think about it, but it's really important that we need to address this. So it's really about a partnership. Obviously, if you know about investments and all that, you could take a more active role. But I think at a minimum, there's obviously a great place to start, just to have dialogue and to be part of that conversation with your spouse. I know we have 1.5 minutes.
Probably one or two more questions, if the audience don't mind. Here he says, do you have a ratio for savings for yourself, children, and the future? Like, is there like a, proportions of how much should go for the children, how much you keep for yourself, and then how much to keep for the future?
I think it's important that you don't give everything to your children. And I don't say it in an unkind way. I think we all need to make sure that we provide for ourselves. Actually, I always tell my children the only thing I owe them is an education, which I paid dearly for, and the rest is up to them. In fact, what I did was to buy an insurance on myself, so that when I die, they have money. And so I said to them, actually, whatever I have, I'm going to spend it all, because, you know, you don't need any of my current finances, right? You're going to... and of course, if I don't spend it all, my plan actually is to pay it forward. And I started an NGO 3 years ago, and that's one of the things that I'm passionate about, that I want to leave behind, and I can help others. So I've provided for my children. I'm going to do what I want to do, and whatever spare cash, hopefully others can benefit.
Yeah, I think so. Because basically, I think most of us believe in that. Asians, a lot of Asians do. And the parents will say, look, I've given you an education. You have to look after yourself after this. I'm not going to look after you for the rest of your life. I have to look after myself then. So we would definitely think about education is the best philosophy in terms of investing in them, and that's it. But let's just say it could be very expensive too, looking after your kids' education. So with that, I think we are running out of time. I don't want to hold you all back from the next wonderful program, which is the Friendship Night. And the theme is Colors of Love. I can see there are many colors out there. I'm not sure which one is the best color to signify love. We have had some discussion. Sharon said red, I said pink. So I'm not sure. So you come in your colors of love for tonight's Friendship Night. And I would just like to say the theme is Rasa Sayang That is to mean feelings of love. So it means we're just going to show love tonight. Right? Everybody, we will show up in friendship and love. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tracy, for giving us this wonderful discussion, putting us hopefully in the right direction and frame of mind, not to just think, oh, my husband is the one, I don't care. Yeah? Most of us do that. And I think it's not a necessarily a good thing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So I will leave you with 3 things. One is, do think about your worth. Do think about what it is that is important to you. Think about planning for yourself, first of all. And with that, with all those questions that I've posed, you can think about the legacy that you want to leave behind, and what is your purpose and goals.
Maybe I could just ask one thing that's always bugged me. Should we ever tell our husband, please let me see your will? What is in the will, please? So that I know who you're leaving it to and what are you leaving to me.
I know Puan Sri will be very apt at knowing how to get the answer out of the husband. So it's about how you ask it, right? In order to get the answers that you want. I think it's important to know.
Is it like a rude thing, a bad thing that you ask your husband what is in your will? Who are you going to leave it to? Is it me or not?
I would ask.
All right. Since we're running out of time, can I also please ask our President-elect, SI, Sharon Fisher, to please give away our gifts of appreciation to our esteemed speaker, Tracy, and our facilitator, Siu Yong. Thank you. a big thank you for facilitating that session.